And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to be taking a look at a game from a small publisher, Fault Line Studios, and that game is Dados, which is a die-rolling game with a little bit of an area control mechanic in which you're going to roll dice and place them on these tiles here in order to try and get the most dice on the tile. This game was kindly provided to me for review by BoardGameExchange.com, where you can try games before you buy them. Now that I've said that, why don't we take a look at what comes inside the box, how the game plays, and what my thoughts are on it. So here's everything that comes inside of the box for Dados. And what you see here is there's a bunch of tiles, 18 to be exact, and then a whole bunch of dice. And this is a two-player game, so you have dice in red and you have dice in blue for the two different players. And the tiles also take two different forms. There are predominantly black tiles, and these tiles are going to be tiles that score in one way or another. So you can see one here. This tile, if I were to be able to flip it over, would score me some points for one thing or another. And on a player's turn, they have two choices. Their first choice is to roll 4 dice. So they would take 4 dice out of their pool of all of these dice and roll them. And then what they would do is they would take their 4 dice, and they would have a choice of placing them on 4 different tiles. So they always have to place the 4 dice on 4 separate tiles. So let's say they placed here, and here, and here, and here. That would be the end of their turn. And then the next player would also roll dice, and they would place their dice if they wanted to. So let's say they rolled their dice and they came up with these 4. Now, the point of the game is to try and have the highest pip total on a tile on your turn in order to be able to score that tile. So for example, right now, red has a 6 here, a 6 here, a 2 here, and a 3 over on this white tile. The problem is that you can only score a tile if there are both players' colored dice on them. So for example, red can now not flip any of these 4 tiles because red is the only presence there. But what blue may want to do is they'll put a 6 here, so now that tile is matched out and neither player can flip it. They'll put a 3 here to match the 3, they'll put a 2 over here to match the 2, and just for example, let's say they place this last 2 on with the 6. Now it would be the red player's turn again, and they have a choice. They could either roll 4 more dice and place them all on individual tiles, or they can flip one tile on which their pips are higher than their opponent's. So for example, they could flip this black tile because they have a 6 while the opponent only has a total of 2. And so they're going to look at it and they would say, okay, I'm going to score this tile, and all the dice would come off and they'd be out of the game. But they're going to flip this tile over and they're going to score points. And so it says you score only singles. Well, the dice that were on there were a 6 and a 2. There are no singles there. So they score no points after flipping the tile. Wonderful. Then the game would continue on and there'd be more rolling and placing. So let's say blue placed here and red placed here, and then on blue's turn, he wants to flip this tile, so he's going to flip it. And you'll see that this tile says, score only doubles or higher. Well, there's a doubles of 6 on there, so he'll score 12 points. And essentially the game goes on like this until either all of the dice have been played and then all of the tiles that can be flipped are flipped. Really, that's actually the only way for the game to end. So once all of the dice have been played and everybody's flipped any tiles that they can flip, the game's going to end. Now there are these 4 special white tiles. And the white tiles modify, or they give you a special action during the game. So this one says, after rolling, may put 2 dice on any tile. And the rules generally say that when you roll, you may only put 1 die on a tile. So this one allows you once during the game to place an extra die on a tile to maybe get an advantage to allow you to flip that tile. However, since you don't know what's under that tile, you don't know what you'll be getting when you flip it. As I said, you play until all of the tiles that can be flipped have been flipped, and the game ends. Whoever has the higher point total wins. So that's Dados, or whatever the game's called. And my opinions on it is that this game is terrible. Essentially, you have a handful of dice and you roll them, and you try your best to match your dice up with your opponent's dice so that they can't flip anything over, or to get onto separate tiles so that you can flip something over, but all the while you have no control over the rolling, you have no idea as to what's underneath that tile, and half the time the tiles don't really tell you exactly what they mean in scoring. Score only singles. Well, does that mean that I only score a die that is the only type of that die there? For example, if it's the only 2, do I score that one because it's a single? Or does it mean that I only score dice with the 1 value? I don't know. But really, the winning is going to come down to whoever gets luckier and finds the right tile to flip over and gets a big score. So some of the tiles double your entire die total for the tile, while some of them give you score-only singles. There's really nothing to this game. I don't really see any redeeming factor to it, so I would heavily suggest not taking a look at this game. If you really feel the desire to, maybe you really just like luck games, Dados may be something for you, but for me, it's just a no-go. To try this title and over 800 others before you buy them, check out BoardGameExchange.com.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.
Yeah?